P-27, the Degtyaryov, the record player of the Red Army in World War II, an American military perspective. When we look back at the weapons that define the Second World War, certain names stand out with almost mythic resonance. The German MG-42, nicknamed Hitler's buzzsaw, the American Browning automatic rifle, or BAR, and the British Bren gun. Each has its place in the annals of firearms history, and each shaped the tactical doctrines of their respective armies. Yet among these iconic weapons sits a machine gun that has often been underestimated, caricatured, or remembered more for its peculiar appearance than for its actual battlefield performance. I am referring to the Soviet Degtyaryov infantry machine gun, most commonly known in the West as the DP-28, but within the Red Army often designated as the P-27 during the early stages of its service. Its circular pan magazine earned it the enduring nickname, the record player. From the standpoint of an American military analyst, it is both a fascinating and revealing case study in Soviet design philosophy, wartime necessity, and the brutal realities of the Eastern Front. The story of the P-27 begins with Vasily Degtyaryov, one of the founding fathers of Soviet small arms design. In the 1920s, as the newly formed Red Army sought to equip itself with modern automatic weapons, Degtyaryov developed a family of machine guns that were simple, rugged, and relatively easy to mass produce. Among them was the infantry light machine gun that would enter service in 1927, hence its designation. By the time Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, this weapon had been in frontline service for nearly 14 years. In American terms, it would be as if the U.S. Army had gone into battle in 1941, still heavily reliant on the 1927 variant of the BAR. That comparison alone illustrates both the challenges faced by Soviet industry and the durability of Degtyaryov's design. From the outside, the P-27 looked almost whimsical compared to its Western counterparts. The large, flat, circular magazine perched atop the receiver gave the appearance of an old phonograph turntable. Soldiers quickly dubbed it the record player, and even today, most images of Soviet infantry from the Second World War include at least one trooper carrying this distinctive weapon. But beneath its eccentric silhouette lay a machine gun that was emblematic of Soviet priorities: ease of manufacture, tolerance of derp and abuse, and the ability to function in the harshest environments imaginable. Let us begin with the design itself. The P-27 was chambered in 7.62 by 54 mm R cartridge, the same round that had been standard in Russian service since the 1890s. This rimmed cartridge was far from ideal for automatic weapons. It complicated feeding and required careful engineering of the magazine, but it simplified logistics as virtually every rifle and machine gun in Soviet service used the same ammunition. Degtyaryov chose a gas-operated action with a flapper-locking bolt, a system robust enough to handle the powerful round while remaining simple to produce. The weapon weighed around 9 kilograms, or 20 pounds, comparable to other light machine guns of the era, and could be fired from a bipod. Its cyclic rate of fire was about 550 rounds per minute, slower than the German MG-42 or MG-42, but comparable to the BAR or Bren. The most distinctive feature, of course, was the 47-round pan magazine. Unlike the box magazines used by most other light machine guns, the pan fed rounds radially into the action, driven by a clockwork-like mechanism. On the one hand, this allowed for a relatively high capacity compared to the 20-round BAR or even the 30-round Bren magazines. On the other hand, reloading was slower, the magazines were bulky and prone to damage, and dirt could easily jam the mechanism if it was not carefully maintained. Soviet troops often carried multiple pans in Kansas pouches, but resupply was a constant challenge. An American GI might reload his bar in a second or two by swapping a box magazine. A Soviet gunner had to fumble with a large metal disc that was both heavy and awkward. From an American military perspective, the P-27's strengths and weaknesses are best understood in the context of Red Army doctrine. Soviet infantry tactics emphasized massed firepower, with each rifle platoon centered on one or two Degtyaryov machine guns. Unlike the U.S. Army, which treated the bar as a walking fire support weapon for individual squads, the Soviets placed heavier reliance on the P-27 as the backbone of their infantry fire. This was partly due to the lack of semi-automatic rifles early in the war. While the U.S. fielded M1 Garand widely, the Red Army was still heavily dependent on the Mosin-Nagant bolt-action rifle. Thus, the P-27 had to provide sustained suppressive fire that American squads might otherwise achieve with multiple semi-automatics and a bar. In effect, the Soviet machine gunner carried a disproportionate burden. How did the weapon perform in combat? Accounts from the Eastern Front paint a mixed picture. On the positive side, the P-27 was durable in the extreme. Its simple gas system and rugged construction meant it could keep firing under conditions that would choke more finely machined weapons. In the mud of the spring thaw, the dust of summer offensives, and the sub-zero blizzards of Russian winters, the Degtyaryov kept working. German soldiers frequently remarked on its persistence, noting that even poorly trained Soviet conscripts could bring heavy automatic fire to bear with relative ease. From the standpoint of reliability, the P-27 compared favorably to the MG-34, which, though accurate and fast-firing, required meticulous cleaning and maintenance. Yet there were undeniable drawbacks. The Pan magazines were fragile and time-consuming to reload. A typical gun team needed several assistants to keep the gun fed in prolonged engagements. In defensive positions, where time allowed for preloaded pans to be stockpiled, the system worked reasonably well. But in mobile operations, particularly during the desperate retreats of 1941, many gunners found themselves with an empty record player and no spare pans ready to go. Moreover, the weapon's rate of fire, though adequate, could not match the terrifying volume of the MG-42. German infantry squads, built around their machine guns, often outgunned their Soviet counterparts on a per-unit basis. From an American analytical lens, the P-27 represents a pragmatic compromise. It was not elegant, nor was it the most lethal in terms of raw power fire. But it could be produced in the tens of thousands by Soviet industry that had been uprooted and evacuated eastward. It could be placed in the hands of minimally trained recruits and still function. And it used ammunition that was already universal. In a total war where the Soviet Union lost millions of men and had to replace entire armies, these qualities were decisive. A weapon that could be produced cheaply and reliably was far more valuable than one that required skilled machining or lengthy training. To appreciate the P-27 fully, it is useful to compare it directly with American and German contemporaries. The U.S. bar was a beautifully crafted weapon, but it suffered from limited magazine capacity and weight. It was, in essence, a heavy automatic rifle rather than a true light machine gun. The Bren gun, used by the British, was more comparable to the P-27 in role, though superior in ergonomics and magazine design. German machine guns, particularly the MG-34 and MG-42, were in a different league entirely, with blistering rates of fire and belt-fed systems that allowed for sustained barrages. Yet these German guns were far more complex and expensive to produce. The Soviets, with their quantity has a quality of its own approach, chose a path that fit their industrial and tactical reality. On the battlefield, Soviet soldiers developed creative ways to maximize the P-27's utility. Many accounts describe gun teams rotating magazines, with assistants preloading pans under cover. Others improvised protective covers for the magazines to keep dirt out.
Partisans behind German lines particularly valued the weapon since it could be maintained with minimal resources, and its pan magazines, though clumsy, allowed for extended firefights against occupation forces. In urban battles, such as Stalingrad, the P-27's compact size compared to heavier machine guns was an advantage. Gunners could set up in rubble or windows and deliver bursts of suppressive fire. The record player nickname, though humorous, reflects a deeper truth. The weapon symbolized the character of the Red Army itself. Like a phonograph grinding out the same tune, the Degtyaryov produced a steady, relentless beat of fire gun that, while not glamorous, wore down the enemy through sheer persistence. It lacked the virtuoso brilliance of the MG-42, but in the long symphony of the Eastern Front, it played its part with determination.